Hi, this is video number 5 in a series of videos where we're making a tank battle game in Unity for Android mobile devices. This course is for beginners. In this video we're going to do two things. The first one is finish off the tank control script, okay, the player tank drive script. And what we're going to do there is in the last video we enabled the keyboard. We could move this tank around with our keyboard, but as you can see, so I'll show you now, when you use the keyboard, all right, the the tank actually moves slower than it does. This is using the keyboard, so this is A and D, and if you look at the left and right here are faster, and the forward and back are faster on the keyboard. Okay, now for development purposes that's not necessarily a problem, and that can be desirable in some situations, all right, but by making a small change to that code, what you can do is offer keyboard support to your game, which means or game object game controller support for your game, as long as the game controller has a horizontal and vertical axis. For example, an Xbox 360 controller, the left joystick is horizontal and vertical, and I have one of those connected now, and I'll just show you that we currently have using the horizontal and vertical. I'm actually moving this now with an Xbox 360, the left joystick, okay, and keyboard and on screen and keyboard. Okay, so we already have three ways of controlling this tank. However, we need to get the speed of all three of them the same or as similar as we want them. Okay, good. So let's solve that problem first, and then the second once we've done that, we'll be able to move to the second point, which is we're going to move the materials on these tracks. Okay, so once we've got these buttons completed, okay, then we can move on to moving the materials on these tracks to give the impression that the tracks are moving in the correct way when the player presses forward, back, left or right, or uses a keyboard, or uses a game controller which supports a horizontal and vertical axis. Okay, so let's move to this script. So if you open the player tank drive script, which is the script we've been using in the previous two videos, okay, I'll just explain to you now why the keyboard is running slower than the on-screen buttons, and the answer is because the input from the keyboard here is multiplied by speed times time dot delta time, and the rotate left right, the horizontal, is multiplied by rotation speed times time dot delta time. However, the values coming from the on-screen buttons are not multiplied by these two here. Okay, these two values. Therefore, they're different. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat the input, whether it arrives from the keyboard or controller and or the on-screen buttons, the same. Okay, we're going to, once we receive that value from whichever source, we will then apply these to it, okay, and then use those to move our tank. Okay, so let's create two floats, forward back adjusted and left right adjusted. Okay, and if we go to update, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this and this. Okay, so we can double this out and there you go. Exactly the same, except we've removed this. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we do want to use this, but we want to use it after we've received all the potential values of forward and back. Okay. So we now say forward and back adjusted, which is our new float here, okay, is equal to whichever value of forward and back we receive, whether it's from keyboard or game controller or from on-screen buttons, multiplied by speed times time dot delta time, and again for left and right, this value here, whether it's this value from the keyboard, etc., or from the button. Okay, we'll also treat that to this. All right. Good. Now we need to actually move the tank. All right, because all we've done is we've grabbed the value and we've multiplied it by a speed and by time dot delta time. So we need to use those values. So go to the function void tank forward back, and here, as you can see, the reason why that the keyboard was slower is because we were using this here and we was using it here, i.e. it was getting a double helping of multiplied by speed times time dot delta time. So we don't want that. Okay, we only want these values to be affected one time by these variables. Okay, by these values. Okay, so here we double out this and we change it to this, which is transform.forward times forward back adjusted, our new adjusted value. Okay, good. And in rotation here, the same. We're going to exchange the left right, which is here, the old value with the new one with the left right adjusted, which is the value left right, and multiplied by the rock speed times time dot delta time. Good. Okay, so if you save that, and you can take a screenshot of this. Okay, and that's that script done. So just to remind, we did that so that regardless of where the input comes from, whether it's on-screen buttons, a keyboard connected to the phone, yeah, or a some kind of game controller or controller that has horizontal and vertical axis, because that's what we're using, and all those things are coming through here. Yeah. The speed at which the tank moves will be the same or similar regardless, and I'll say similar because you can actually make them different or fine-tune them, and I'll explain that to you in a moment. Okay, so file, save. Now we need to do one more thing, and this refers to this input manager. In our script we have this vertical and horizontal. That refers to this horizontal and vertical in this input manager. Okay, what we want to do is, okay, so that's just to show you again, edit, project settings, input. Okay, this one here. Here are your values of the keyboard: A and D, A, D, and S and W, horizontal and vertical. Okay, good. So what we want to do, yeah, is at the moment we have this gravity of 3 and sensitivity of 3. All right. This file 1 here is just like a regular button, yeah, so to speak. All right. And fire 2 Okay, so what we're going to do is, if you see there, they have a gravity of 1000 and a sensitivity of 1000. So we're going to put that in here as well. You can put whatever value you want in there. You could encourage the player to use a controller by giving them, more responsive values in horizontal and vertical, and they're kind of more inclined to try and play the game using a controller rather than the on-screen buttons. But that's your choice. All right. So all we've done there is we've gone into the input manager and we've changed this to a gravity and the sensitivity to 1000 on both the horizontal and the vertical axes. Okay, so file, save, and we'll press play and we'll do some tests. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how fast this goes when we press the on-screen controls. So forward, back. Okay, forwards, forward, back. Okay, so it's quite fast. Forwards, back. Okay, and left and right. Okay, so we'll go to the keyboard now and see if it's the same. So W, S, forward, back. That looks the same to me as this. Yep. Okay, and left and right on here, and now A and D. Yep, that's the same as well. Okay, so last test is the controller. So now I'm going to use the left joystick on this game controller. Forward, back, and left and right. And as you can see, so it's left, right, forward, back, left, right. You can see now the response speed of the tank to input from a keyboard, on-screen buttons, and a controller that supports the horizontal and vertical axis is the same or similar. Okay, and I said to you that you can modify them in the input manager. Okay, so that's why I put the word similar there. Okay, it's up to you. Good. So that's the first part of this video complete, and this brings us nicely onto the second part of the video. Is making the tank tracks move, so to speak. All right. Now, because this model is does not have flexible suspension and tracks, they're fixed. Okay. This model was made in SketchUp, okay, and basically what we have is what we can do with this is we can move the material that's used to paint the tracks, okay, so to speak. Alright, so let me just explain this to you. And also, before we do anything, we need to understand how a tank moves. Okay, so let's see how a tank moves first. Now, a tank is different to a wheeled vehicle in as much as it's a tracked vehicle. Okay, and that means that the way that it turns and it moves is different. Okay. And something that we need to understand before we start getting into any code is what kinds of ways will this tank move, and how do we represent that movement using these tracks at the front. Okay, these images or materials, textures, whatever you want to call them here. Okay, so first of all, when the tank goes forwards, okay, the tracks at the front are going to move. Turn this terrain off. Okay, when the tank goes forward, the tracks at the front, this will kind of go down. Okay, both sides, and at the back, because it's like a conveyor here. These ones will kind of go downwards. Okay, and it'll come around here and go like upwards. So we have a situation where on each track, the front material needs to be going in a downward direction, and the rear material needs to be going in an upward direction. Okay, so we have a situation there where our code needs to say, okay, if it's going forwards, make the front materials go in a downward direction and the rear the materials at the rear of the track go in an upward direction. That's the first thing to consider. And in reverse, it's going to be exactly the same. If this is going in reverse, these ones will be going in a downward direction and these ones will be going in an upward direction. Okay. Now, a tank has tracked vehicles have a special property, and that's the ability to turn on the spot. Okay. Now, how do they do that? Right. Well, basically, what they do is they this tank, okay, can spin round on the spot, so to speak. It can literally just sit there like that, just spin round and round and round, clockwise or anti-clockwise. Okay. Now, to do that, the tank, what it does is it says, right, okay, I'm going to spin clockwise. So this track, the left track, is going to go forwards, okay, and the right track is going to go in reverse. Okay, so this one goes forward and this one goes in reverse. Now if it wants to spin anti-clockwise, this track's going to go forward and this one's going to go in reverse. So we need to think about these 4 scenarios and how we're going to make these materials behave correctly depending on whether the vehicle, the tank, is going forwards or in reverse, or is stationary but rotating. Okay, it's not going forwards and backwards. It's just sitting on the spot and rotating in circles, and in which direction it's going. Okay, now it sounds quite a task, and you know this is a course for beginners, but it's not actually that difficult to do, but as long as you understand the concept of how a tank moves and what the player's expectations are going to be. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Now this tank, okay, I'm going to turn off the turret here. Okay, this tank, I need to talk about this tank because I've mentioned the word materials, okay, in plural, okay, and that's really important because we're not going to use any animation, okay, and we're not going to use anything special to move this. We're just going to use a small line of code which is going to move these materials, okay, in the correct direction depending on how the tank is moving. Alright, now let's have a look at our tank. Okay, and if you look here, it's got 6 materials. Okay, it's got the hull, which is the camo here. It's got second one on the hull, which is like the dark grey base to it, and then it's got 4 track left front, track left rear, track right front, track right rear. Okay, so that means that each track, the left track is different to the right track. Okay, that you have to treat them differently, okay, separately, because when it's rotating, this one's going to go forwards and this one's going to go backwards. So how to do that? Well, okay, when the model is drawn, and this was drawn in SketchUp, basically you need to look at the track and say, okay, don't worry about the edges of the track, just the face of the track here. Each track needs to be divided into 2 parts, the front and the rear. The front and the rear, and each one of them, the front and the rear and the front of the rear, needs to be a different color. Alright, so you use, for example, the paintbrush in SketchUp here, and if we look here, if I turn this one off, you can see, okay, this was, for example, painted in color 1. Okay, this part was painted in color 2. This part was painted in color 3, and this part was painted in color 4. Right? So how do you get them? Well, in SketchUp all I did was drew a line across there halfway down and literally painted this as color 1, this color 2, this color 3, and this is colors 4. Imported the whole thing, into Unity, and renamed them accordingly. Okay, and made them mobile shaders. Okay, mobile. I chose vertex lit, and there they are. All right. So actually, when you first look at this tank, you think, oh, it's got some. If you got a track here, and it looks like one continuous track, but it's not. It's actually made up of 4 parts. There's the front left, rear left, front right, rear right, and each of them's got a different material on it. Okay, and we need that because sometimes we're going to remember, yeah, that when the tank's going forwards, this material here needs to be going in a downward direction, and this one needs to be going in an upward direction. Okay. Okay, so let's see this in action. So all of the preparation for this, you don't need any animation or anything at all. You need to just get the tracks of your model and divide them into 4 parts. Okay, like I just showed you here. 2 at the front, 2 at the rear. Okay, with different colors or materials on each. Good. Okay, so how do we move these? Well, we're going to need a script. So go to your scripts folder and create a new script, C script, and call it tank scroll. Okay, and I'm going to have a look at this now. And I'll attach it now. This is a script that is going to be attached to the hull, which is where the materials for the tracks are. Here, front left, yeah, rear left, front right, rear right. Okay, it's these 4. We're gonna be moving these 4 materials depending upon which buttons the player's pressing over here. Okay, to give the impression that the tracks are actually moving. Alright, because we have fixed suspension and fixed tracks. Okay, great, and we're not using animation. Okay, so let's have a look in there. Okay, tank scroll. Okay, take a screenshot of this. Okay, and I'll explain what's going on. It's actually a quite straightforward, easy script. Okay, might not look it because there's lots of lines in there of code, but actually there's a lot of duplication going on. I'll explain. Okay, the first thing we need to do here, we get a renderer render, right? So we're going to create this thing which is going to get the renderer. Okay, come to that in a second. We've got a public float which is speed. This speed this speed is the speed at which the materials, this piece of code is going to spin or move these materials. Okay, all right, so it says 10, right? It says 10 over here. In the start, we're going to use rend. Okay, this renderer, we're going to use rend, okay, to get the actual renderer that's holding these materials that we want to move. Okay, so it's going to grab this bit here. Okay, good, and from now on it's called rend. Okay, now let's have a look at this here. So this first bit says tank drives forward only. This is all in update. Okay, let's have a look at this. Okay, because if you understand this one, you'll understand all the rest of them. Okay, so it says if player tank drive forward back is less than 0. Okay, so player tank, if player tank drive forward back, like this value or this value, yeah, okay, is less than 0, okay, then it must mean that this tank is moving forward or back. Okay, but in particular, the way it's set up is if the value forward back is less than 0, it means it's going forwards, and if it's greater than 0, it's going in reverse or backwards. Okay, so if player's pressing some buttons over here or pressing some keys on the keyboard, whatever happens, the player says, right, we want to go forward. Okay, this over here, we'll check it, say, right, yep, player wants to go forward. Okay, it's got a value less than 0, so it's definitely going to go forwards. Right, what should we do? Well, okay, here's the left track and here's the right track. Now remember that on each track there's the front and the rear of the track, and the texture on the front, or the material on the front, when it's going forward goes down, and at the rear it goes up. Yeah, because it's like a conveyor or a belt going round, right? A track going round and round and round, right? So that means that if the material on the front of the track, the left track, is going in a downwards direction, alright, then the material attached to the rear of the left track needs to be doing the opposite, and that's why we've put the minus sign here. Okay, now what are materials 2 and 3? Well, here, because we've labelled our materials clearly, we know that in our look at our materials, we've got 6 materials. 0 and 1 are the hull, but 2, 3, 4 and 5, these ones, are these numbers here. 2, right, so 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, these numbers here correspond to these numbers over here. So number 2 and number 3 are track front, track left front, and track left rear. Okay, so if it's going forward, this one's going downwards direction, so it's a positive number, and this is a negative number. Okay, for the right track, because this says here, I've put your note here, right track front, right track rear. Here 4 and 5 is track right front, track right rear. Okay, then we're going to do the same with that. Okay, now if it goes in reverse, so first of all, to understand, we need some input. We've got some input, and we need to decide which direction these materials on the left track and the right track, which direction these materials need to move in, either downwards or upwards. Okay, depending on if they're front or the rear of the tank, or if the tank's going forwards or backwards. Now, in this second situation, it says if, okay, the tank drives in reverse, alright? So it says there, if the player tank drive dot forward back is greater than 0, which means it's going backwards. The player wants the tank to go in reverse, okay, because it's greater than 0. Okay, then we're going to separate out again. Left track, right track. Okay, reverse is the opposite to forward, so all we do is, okay, this is positive, negative, positive, negative. This needs to be the opposite, negative, positive, negative, positive. Okay, now those two are quite straightforward. However, when the tank, when the tank is stationary and is spinning and then decides to rotate on the spot or to turn left or turn right, however you want to word it, but effectively it's rotating. Okay, then we need to do something a little bit more different to this. Remember, when it rotates to clockwise, the left track goes forwards and the right track is backwards. Anti-clockwise, the right track is forward and the left track is backwards. Right, so let's do the code for that, and that's here. So basically it says okay, if player tank drive forward is equal to 0, which means there's no input at all, right? Because remember here, if there's no input from this here, it's going to be 0. And if there's no input from pressing the buttons, it's going to remain 0 all the way down to here. So therefore, if it's 0, it's not receiving any input. It must mean the tank is not moving forwards or backwards. So it says here, if it's not moving forwards and backwards, i.e. the value of forward backward is 0, equal to 0, and the player tank drive left right is less than 0, which means that there is input coming here. Okay, right, so i.e. the player's pressing not pressing the forward and the back, but is pressing the left or the left one, yeah, or the right one. We're dealing with both situations. Okay, one of these, left or right, there's some input coming through. So okay, if it's 0, if it's less than 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to the left. This means that the tank wants to rotate left. Okay, less than 0. I've put a note here. Tank stopped and rotate left. So that means the left track needs to go in reverse and the right track goes forward. Well, we know that the left track in going forward, the left track in reverse is going to be this. So this is exactly the same. So it's minus speed plus speed on 2 and 3, which is the left track, front and rear. And right track forward. Well, this is 4 and 5 are the right track, so this is a positive and a negative on 4 and 5. Here we go, 4 and 5, positive and negative. So that's going to do that. Now, as with forward and reverse being opposites, then of course rotate right and left are going to be opposites, and quite simply here you've got negative, positive, positive, negative. Here you have positive, negative, negative, positive. Okay, so file save. Okay, file save, and let's go and see if this works. All of this depends upon isolating the materials, dividing the track into 2 pieces, having the front half of the track and the rear half of the track, and painting them different materials so that you can change them in different ways. Alright, okay, that's all it is. Alright. Good. So we've got our script attached to this now. We'll hit apply. Okay, and we'll see what happens. All right. Remember, we can change these values in the editor, so we're going to need to do that. So let's have a look at this. So, going to use the on screen here. Okay, it's a bit fast, so let's slow this down. Slow this tank down a little bit. I'll just put it at 2. Okay, let's see what happens. There you go. I'll put it at 1. 1 and 2. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Right, now as you can see, that's working. Alright, so So it's grabbing the script, we're going forwards, the front tracks are going downwards. Actually looks pretty good, even though this is just the image on here is, it's not the actual track one, it's one that I'm using so that you can see it more clearly, but it's actually quite impressive. Now this is going forwards and backwards, which is good. Then let's rotate this, and as you can see here, it's rotating right. So we want the left to go forwards and the right one to go in reverse. Okay, and we'll try left. Yeah, so the logic of that is correct, but let's see if it's actually the same on the rear of the tank. So let's speed this tank up a little tiny bit. Let's try this. Okay, unclick the tank. Okay, so it's turning correctly on the spot. Yeah, good. Right, so you see that, so you can see it more clearly on this way anyway. So okay, so we're rotating to the right, yeah, and the tracks are now moving in the correct way. That's how it would rotate. And we're going to the left, and they reverse. Okay, good. Okay, let's go forwards. Yes, yes, very good. Just one more test. Yeah. Yep, good. Yep, that's fine. Okay. Forwards there. Now I think that's working well. Okay, now as I just mentioned, this material that I'm using here is, you know, obviously the tracks don't have white lines on them like this. I've used this one just to make it clear so that you can see it more easily. But once you've got your actual track material in there, it's gonna look really good. Okay, so there you go. That's how to get your tracks moving. Also how to get your keyboard and your on-screen buttons and a game controller or controller that supports horizontal and vertical access to control the tank in similar fashions. Okay, and let's just turn this turret back on, and there you go. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to start work on this turret. Okay, now I just want to say something quickly here, is that the turret, okay, is again is a little bit involved, but I would say that it's easier than the hull. Okay, but to make it easier for everybody really, watch video number 2, which is called Tank Colliders. Now it probably sounds quite boring, Tank Colliders, but actually the in there it says, you know, how to set up your colliders in a way which is going to work. All right, and for those of you who've already watched it, just to remind you, just make sure that your collider of your turret is not touching any of the colliders of the hull. Okay, alright, just leave a little bit of a gap there. Okay, so there we come to the end of this video. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you learned something. Please subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up if you like the video. And as I said, in the next video we're going to start doing some work on the turret. Okay, and again that'll take a couple of videos to complete. Alright, so see you in the next video, and thank you.